Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this session all about calling or voice inside Microsoft Teams. My name is Barry Coombs. I'm one of the co-owners here at Computer World and the Chief Technologist, spending most of my time at the moment looking at Microsoft 365 technology, specifically Microsoft Teams, and how organizations like yours can make the most of it, make sure everyone knows how to use the tools that are available, and you've got standards across your business. I'd like to introduce onto this session with me, Tom Shepherd, who is one of the specialist architects here at Computer World. Tom, do you want to give just a bit of your background and what you do at Computer World?
Hi, Barry. Yep, my name's Tom Shepherd. I'm a technical architect in the pre-sales team at Computer World. I specialize in a range of solutions from storage and networking all the way down to sort of more user-centric solutions like Microsoft Teams calling. So I'm the technical guy for all your technical requirements when you need them.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Tom, and thank you for joining me for this session. So we've got a agenda today that is focusing all around Teams calling, looking at the kind of the increased need or why there is a decreased desire around calling or voice inside Microsoft Teams. We want to show you a few demonstrations, both from a user's perspective, but also from an administration perspective. And there are a number of choices, there are a number of options available when considering how to place your phone calls via Microsoft Teams. And finally, the other thing that we will be looking at is the meeting room technology, with people returning into the office, with video being a more important part of our day-to-day lives at the moment. It's important that we consider how we're going to be making sure that you look your best, you sound your best, and you have the right solutions available for the right time. So Tom, first of all, the starting point that we've got here, why are we seeing more people inquiring to us about moving their phone system or their calling capability into Microsoft Teams at the moment?
So I think as we sort of move to a world where we're doing a lot more video calling and instant messaging and using Teams very heavily in our lives for collaboration and communication, phone systems are sort of moving more into the kind of legacy technology, but it's still a very important part of the business, especially for those sort of external contacts. Maybe it's a customer that wants to dial in, or maybe it's a school and they need to have a telephone number where parents can get hold of them. So it's still a very important piece of technology. But as we're sort of moving ourselves away from the office perhaps and becoming more remote working, what we actually need is a solution that anyone can access from anywhere, whether it's like myself at the moment from home, or they're from a coffee shop when they're working, and we want to be able to disconnect from having a physical piece of hardware on site somewhere that requires maintenance, that takes down the entire system if there's power problems or hardware issues like that. And it seems to us that the perfect place to integrate that into that legacy phone system is into the best tool that we have for collaboration and communication, which is Microsoft Teams.
Definitely. I think it's that unified tool, isn't it? I think in the past, the phone system has been an exercise of trying to find out who can provide us with the most features out of any phone system that's available. There was that kind of migration from analog calling to IP-based calling that I know in my previous roles was a big part of what we were looking at, with voice over IP becoming that standard. But now Teams is now the standard for communication. So it makes sense that the telephony part is also enabled inside of there. So as we kind of go back to this hybrid world, as people look to make those changes permanent that have maybe been in place for the last 12 months now, a natural progression seems to be looking at how Microsoft Teams could be helping with that. So at a very high level, Tom, do you just want to give those watching an overview of some of the components that make up voice within inside Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, so what we're doing is, we're taking that more traditional phone system and we're using the baked-in technology that's already in Teams. So in terms of configuration and setup, it is very simple because it is a feature set that's already in the solution. And the first thing we need to look at really is to make sure that you're licensed for it. So I won't go into all of the sort of details of the licenses now, but essentially we need to make sure that we select a package that's correct and right for your business, for your environment, that enables Microsoft Teams voice calling for your users, and then also we can enable licensing for things like Teams rooms as well on top of that.
Definitely.
And
so it's Sorry, go on there, Tom.
No, it's all right. You go on.
Yeah, so it's about kind of, if you think about it, going back when previously you've bought a phone system, you'd buy something that would go in your rack, and that would be the actual phone system. It certainly back in the day, the phone systems I've worked with took up half a rack, kind of 24 U's worth of kit that was installed into a rack. More recently, it will be something like 1 or 2 U's worth of equipment inside a rack at in your server room kind of thing. And think of that as your phone system license that you're going to buy from Microsoft, that is going to be running in the Microsoft cloud alongside Azure and 365, and you're going to pay for that license or get that included with something like E5 or something like that. And you've then got Microsoft Teams or various different devices as the client.
Yeah, I mean, certainly back in the analog days, it was quite literally a piece of equipment with ports on the front, and each one of those represented a different telephone number. So thankfully, we're sort of moving away from that. And then the other component then is how to actually connect your phone to the outside world. You know, the sort of more traditional kind of the SIP trunks and the dialing, the phone ranges and the number ranges, and you having that sort of thing. So there's a couple of options you have for that, and we'll talk about it in a bit more detail a bit later on. But either you can use the Microsoft calling plans, which is again, it's all baked into the solution, and you can get your external access directly from Microsoft, or we can use direct routing, which is where we would speak to a partner such as ourselves to enable the phone routing through an external partner for more advanced features. This sort of enables things like access to a call center system or something like that.
Definitely. So I think many people, and certainly if you have a very old archaic phone system, you may have been using things like an ISDN 30, and those were kind of the way to connect your phone system prior to SIP trunks and things like that. And obviously BT and providers are phasing those out at the moment. So this is all about that connection to the network, how you're going to pay for your calls, how you're going to access the wider telephony network from that perspective. Now, what we want to do now, and I'm going to have to try and do a slick move, is just kind of give people an idea as to what the experience looks like when you do a demonstration of Microsoft Teams. Tom, whilst I'm just bringing up my desktop, do you want to talk a little bit around the Teams client and where this sits within inside the Teams client while I just change over my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got a few options for the Teams client, as you'll be well aware if you're already using the solution. But you can get to it through the desktop client, through the web client, or on your smartphone, you know, your Android or iOS device. And essentially, when you enable that Teams license, what you're going to get on here on the left-hand side is a new button with a old school telephone handset. I can't believe we're now calling that old school. But that is a legacy handset with calls underneath. And then that gives you this screen here, which gives you access to the standard sort of Teams calling with inside your organization or other Teams users. But it's now also giving you a dial pad so that you can actually punch in numbers and call traditional phones. So one of the features I love about this is not only can you punch in a number, but you can also copy and paste, which makes things a lot easier, I think. So Barry's just put in my work phone here, and as you can see, it's dialing up. I better take this actually, Barry. So just give me a second if you don't mind. Not a great time to be honest. I'll call you back. All right. So there we can see, you know, it just seamlessly integrates that Teams system exactly as you would expect using that sort of, you know, traditional phone.
Definitely. So we've got that for the users that are now spending most of their days, their lives using Teams chat, Teams channels. Calling is now in that same view. As we just demonstrated there, very simply, you can paste a number in, but you can also see the people that you set up as speed dials, what is their current status. So I know here not to interrupt Tom. He's in a meeting at the moment. So before that, I can understand kind of where they are. I can see that Ben is currently offline at the moment. He's actually away, so we can see that it's probably not a good time to be contacting him at the moment. But on the left here, we've got access to our contacts, calling history, and one thing that I particularly like is voicemails. And we can see call here came in from Tom. a little bit earlier on today, and we can see there the message from Tom. Not only can we listen to it, but we can see that it's been transcribed in this view. So it's a very easy view to be looking at, to see what's going on, to be placing your calls and also receiving your calls from that perspective.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite features as well, because I always tend to find that when you get a voicemail, you get a really long, slow sort of explanation, and then when they come to say, "Can you give me a call back on my number?" they read it out as quickly as possible. But the auto dictation there will put it in a message, and you can then copy and paste it and easily call them back.
Definitely. So that was a very simple demonstration as to what the user experience is when you're placing calls using the Teams client. And we do find for a lot of customers, this is the primary way that they will be wanting to make calls. But importantly, it's not the only way. And I think for those people that are adopting a Microsoft phone system with Microsoft 365 and Teams, it's important to consider what devices that you may need. And Tom, you spend quite a lot of time talking to customers around devices, and we can kind of probably split them into two camps here. We've got the personal devices we're going to talk about first, and then the shared devices. So do you just want to talk around what options we've got for personal devices, and maybe what kind of users may look to be using them?
Yeah, so the first thing we've got there is the Poly Voyager headset, which both Barry and I are modeling today. This is an excellent Bluetooth, noise-cancelling, high-quality sort of premium headset. And where we're seeing these being used is for users like ourselves who are desk-based. We make a lot of Teams video calls, we make a lot of phone calls, and this actually for most of us will replace having a desk phone at all. With the calling baked into Teams, you can actually just remove the requirement for that handset. And these come in different options. You can have them without the noise cancelling, you can have them without the wireless, and they come at different price points. But what we've got on today here is really the sort of it's the absolute top end, the best bit of kit you can have, and they are really fantastic. And then we're moving over to the Poly P15 as a personal video bar. I sort of think this looks like basically like a Bluetooth speaker with a camera in the middle. And there is one, in the background of Barry's office there, in his lair of technology. I think actually you've got the Yealink VP59 there as well, haven't you, Barry?
I have. It's very difficult to point behind yourself, but yeah, that's the VP59, and that's the P15 there.
Yeah. So the P15 is an all-in-one bar. It's got a camera. It's got decent sort of kick-ass speakers in there, and it's also got omnidirectional microphones. So you can put that up on top of your monitor, and the whole thing is built in for fantastic video and audio quality for an individual. But probably you can also use that in a sort of small space. Maybe you get two people next to each other, and that's just USB connected straight into your PC or Mac. So that would be really good for people who spend a lot of time doing video content, doing video calls, and it's important to remember as well that you can actually use that personal video bar to make the phone calls through Teams voice calling. So just because we're making phone calls doesn't mean we have to, pick up a traditional phone. We can actually just do that now through the microphone and speakers that you're using on your desk. Then we've got the Yealink video phone, which again we've got in the background there. So that is a sort of full-featured handset with a large touchscreen on there and a good quality camera on the top as well. So that's a really nice unit that we tend to position to sort of executives, someone who wants a dedicated device. And one of the best use cases for that is if you have an executive that's on a lot of very important calls, they want something that they're not going to have any issues with. We're not going to have a problem with the laptop running slowly or suddenly decides to do Windows updates in the middle of a day and does a restart. This is a dedicated device that can do everything. Or perhaps it's in a shared space. Maybe it's in a kind of huddle room or something like that. Maybe your office has little cool booths, which are great. You can put yourself one of these devices in there. They can sit down. They can make phone calls, video calls, whatever it is they need to do. And then finally, we've got that Yealink CP900 speakerphone, which is an array of microphones and a speakerphone in there, which you can USB, you can plug into your laptop or into a device, sit in the middle of a table. Perhaps you've got sort of 3 or 4 people all having a meeting. You can sit around it, and then everyone can be heard. So if you just need to kind of have like a pop-up conference call, that's the kind of thing you can carry on your bag, and you can just throw it out, and then and use that to get a decent, high quality conversation where everybody can hear what's going on, rather than everyone trying to huddle around a laptop and no one really knows what's going on. Had a conversation with a school earlier, and that would have been a great bit of kit for them, because there was 3 or 4 people sat around a table and they could have just thrown that into the middle and everything just would have worked perfectly then.
Definitely. I think one of the things that we always encourage our customers to do when they're looking at calling and they're looking at devices is to create personas. So if you kind of look across your business and create personas, which we can give you a bit of help and guidance on, you will see blocks of people which you can then match the needs to them. So maybe you have a large contact center with a number of people taking telephone calls. The black wire headsets, which is a wired headset, plugs into the computer, it's reliable, not going to have to worry about making sure it's charged or anything like that. Every employee could have one that they put in their bag, so it's nice, clean and hygienic that they plug it in when they get into work. And then as Tom, as you touched upon there, you've got the executives that don't want the faffing about, I just want to make a phone call. Why do I have to open up Teams to make a phone call? I just need to be able to go out and do that. So you can have the kind of video phones, the Yealink VP59 that you mentioned there on their desks. You could even have a HDMI connection to a screen on the wall, so they've got an almost personal video conference solution in their room. So the important thing is just thinking about the needs of the people. I would highly encourage anyone that is using Teams or anything for calling is to look at the headsets. I see far too many people trying to make use of just using the inbuilt speakers and microphones, and the real challenge with that is you might be able to hear people clearly, you might not think you need it, but actually what are the people at the other end feeling? And going back, certainly when I started my IT career, we kind of used to say go to customer meetings suited and booted. It was about that impression, make sure you shine your shoes, got your best suit on. Well, today that first impression is largely a video call. Can you be heard? Can you be seen? So it is important to make sure that that first impression is as good as possible. And obviously that doesn't stop there, Tom. That's just what we look at for the individuals. Do you want to talk a little bit more around meeting room technology, Teams meeting room, and the devices you could be looking at?
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch as well on what you were saying there about the physical handsets. There are still some scenarios where a physical handset is still appropriate. Maybe it's a school and they need to have a phone in a boarding house, for example, so that the pupils can contact their parents, or just for emergency purposes. You need to be able to have a physical handset that you can pick up and you can punch 999 into. You don't want to be sort of messing around with turning a laptop on and that sort of thing. And those sorts of devices can still very much and very easily be integrated into a team system, and they don't have to be sort of fancy devices. Like this one with a screen on them. They can just be a basic handset with just a basic dial pad on there. So they don't need to be highly expensive. They're roughly the same cost as a sort of standard VoIP desktop handset. So moving on to those shared devices, these are the kind of things that we're going to be looking at putting into small meeting rooms right up to kind of the boardroom, starting with the Poly Studio X50 collaboration bar. This also comes as an X30, which is slightly smaller but does the same job. This is taking the idea of that P15 personal bar and just blowing it up in size. So it's a bit like a sound bar that goes onto your TV. It's got speakers, it's got microphones in there, it's got 4K cameras. Teams doesn't support 4K necessarily at the moment, but the great thing about that is that it will do auto pan and zoom, so it can actually zoom into the people in the room and still be at a full 1080 HD quality once it's been zoomed in 4 times. It's got those omnidirectional microphones in there, which have got some clever tech that actually will turn and focus on the person that's talking in the meeting room. It's got kick-ass speakers in there so everyone can hear what's going on, and then you've got the screen which sits on the desk or on the table in the room, which fully controls that system. And when you schedule a meeting, you will invite the Teams room. So that piece of hardware is attached to that Teams room. And when you then walk into the room, you can see, yep, Tom and Barry have got a meeting today, and you click start, and then it all springs to life just like it does when you do a Teams call from your laptop. Then you've got something like the Poly Trio C60 conference phone there, which is what we call a spider phone. So that is a speaker and a microphone system that we would sit in the middle of a room. And again, it's got sort of microphones that can pick up people as they're talking around the table. So you're going to get good audio quality for everyone involved. And then you can go right up to the top the system there, which is the something like a Yealink MVC 800, or Poly also do a G40T system, and above that again with multiple cameras, multiple units on the desk for audio. You've got a big speaker system. You've got a screen on there to control the whole thing. And this is the sort of system you would see in a conference in a conference room. But we're looking at a few different vendors there. We're looking at Poly, we're looking at Yealink. You've got options from Logitech and Crestron and other solutions like this. But one of the nice things about all of these systems is they're all managed as Teams devices. So when you put these into your environment, you don't need to necessarily worry about, but the Poly's going to be done by one management console and the Yealink's going to be done by another. They all just appear as Teams devices. So if you want to mix and match, if you think, the Poly's great for this solution, but the Yealink's better here, then absolutely that works. And one of my favorite things about the Poly equipment is the impressive noise cancelling technology that they built into it. I think, Barry, you've got a prop or two, haven't you, to demonstrate how that works?
Yeah, so I've switched microphones now onto a Poly Studio that I've got configured here in front of me, and there's two kind of modes. One is kind of noise cancelling, and the other one is I forget what they call it, but it's a field. It's almost a field of view for the audio.
Acoustic fencing.
Acoustic fencing, which you set on a direction, so is it 90 degrees from where you are, etc. But let me show you the active noise cancelling. So if I grab this piece of paper here, you can probably hear me crumpling that at the moment. If I stop talking, so I could just be a person that's in a meeting, decided to search through my paperwork for something, you hopefully see the effects that would be, and I don't actively have to mute myself, it will do that for me. So let's see.
Yep, that's working. Well, I can't hear it, so.
So hopefully, as you saw there, that was a demonstration of technology. I'm just going to switch back over to my other mic now.
So one of the great things about that is when you're in a meeting with someone who decides to open a packet of crisps, or the doorbell goes, or someone dogs bark, something like that, and it just cuts it all out, and it avoids that constant kind of can you put yourself on mute, and then because it just cuts out all of the annoying stuff in the background.
Definitely. And one of the other things from that perspective, Tom, as you mentioned about these devices and the management and things like that. So I've got the C60 here, and as you can see, there's quite a large screen on it, and you will get your Teams contacts, you get the dial pad in there. You can even use this as a device to control the Teams room itself. So I really like how this ecosystem comes together to give you that kind of unified management, that unified interface, etc., for getting the most out of Microsoft Teams. So, Tom, I think we should probably pivot now and just give a flavor as to what does the administration experience look like inside of Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So from an administration point of view, it's all done from inside the Microsoft Teams admin center, the same place that you're managing your users, your meetings, or your Teams apps, all that kind of stuff. And then once you've enabled the licensing for Teams voice calling, you'll then get your options down here for voice. So the first thing we'll have a look at is the devices. So we can see we've got IP phones, Teams rooms, collaboration bars, displays, and panels. And in our system at the moment, we've got some IP phones. We've got this Yealink DP59, which is the one that we can see in the background of Barry's video there. And like we were saying, all of this equipment is managed from a single console, regardless of whether it's Yealink or Poly, and you can push out profiles to it. You can do all of that management inside this console. So we don't have to have any kind of third-party administration you need to, and it's all as you expect from the Microsoft sort of design language in terms of their user interface. So you know how to get on with this. And it's all going to be fairly familiar to you. Then we've got things like the collaboration bars, which are the X30 and the X50, those sorts of things we're talking about here. We've got a Poly Studio that we've been sort of demonstrating at the moment. And then if we come down here, we've then got all of the options for the actual voice administration itself. So we can add add phone numbers in here. That's if we're using the Microsoft Call plan, we can add the numbers in there. We can also port numbers. So if you're looking, if you're using a range of numbers at the moment that you want to port over, then that's something possible. We've got emergency policies. So this is what we need to consider in those situations where we need to get hold of the emergency services, and we can put in there sort of different policies for different parts of the organization. We've got dial plans. So that's a set of rules that translates a phone number into a sort of standard number for call authorization and routing. And you can create a system-wide one, and then you can drill that down into more sort of custom dial plans for people in your organization who need that little bit extra level of sophistication. We've got the direct routing. So this is where we would connect up to a session border controller, which is the SBC, and that is what enables those voice calling features through a third party. So we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. But as we were saying earlier, we've got the options of either doing it through direct routing using a session border controller, or we can do it within inside Microsoft using their Microsoft calling plans. We've got voice routing policies. So if this is where you would link to a voice route using PSTN, so you can use existing setup for that. And this is where if you need to route your voice through particular systems, you can set all of that up here. And then we're getting into the sort of more interesting stuff. So we can set up call queues. In this example, we've got a marketing queue. We could set one up for reception. We could set one up for an IT help desk, and we can just come in here very easily and just add in users that you search for a directory as you would expect from using Microsoft technology. So we can see Meg and Barry and I in here at the moment, but I'm not actually in marketing, so I can remove myself from there. Very easy to do. We can set up a greeting. We can put in audio files there, so you can have a custom audio file if you want to. You've got options down here. You can do things like redirection, timeout handling. Also in the queues, you can set it so that if the user wants to, they can actually remove themselves. So they can do a call agents can opt out of taking calls. So if perhaps there's a help desk system, for example, but one of the engineers is really busy on an important case, then they could take themselves out of that. But that's of course optional if you don't want that to happen. And then very simply, you can just hit save on that, and this updates incredibly quickly. If I open up my Teams client now, give it a refresh, that's already been saved. So it's really nice and quick and really easy to make these changes. We've got the auto attendants. So the auto attendant is when you call into a phone system, it gives you that navigation through a menu system, so you can be connected with the right department or the right person or an operator. And again, you can choose your greetings, you can set up the menus, how you want to redirect those calls. And these are very simple to set up again, all just through a nice simple GUI that's going to be easy for you to understand without any kind of additional training. And we can put in here, you have the option for typing in a greeting, and then it will put a sort of computerized voice there. Or if you want a bit more of a personal touch, you can add in an audio file as well. So we can see in this option here, we've got dial 2 to get a direct line straight into Barry, 1 for Dave Wynn, 3 for Megan, and then 4 to go into the marketing queue. We can set up business hours. We can set up an out of hours call flow as well. Lots and lots of options in here. Things for holiday settings. All of those systems that traditionally you obviously would do through your traditional sort of legacy phone system, it's all here within that Teams Admin Center, but much easier to set up in my opinion, without having to get extra training on. We've got options for call park policies. So what happens when you want to put people on hold and when you'll transfer them inside the organization. Options for your calling policies, and options for your caller ID policies. So just to sort of summarize, it's all there within the Teams Admin Center. It's very simple to use. It's going to be very easy to set up and make changes. Everything that you would have wanted to use sort of previously in your in your legacy phone system can all be done here now. Yeah, Barry, do you think of anything else that's worth noting?
No, I think that's it. I think from a perspective of what we want to get across here is calling inside Microsoft Teams is managed much like any other part of Microsoft Teams. It's policy-based. You configure those policies as needed. Let's say that you're a multi-regional, multi-country organization. You can have those different dialing plans and those different things for your different regions. If the calls need to go out via somewhere local from a routing perspective, we can configure all of those. And whilst 9 out of 10 things are configurable in the GUI there is then also PowerShell for advanced configurations that you'll need to be using for things like direct routing and those things as well. There's also a raft of reporting and statistical information to help you make sure that you're getting the best call quality. I don't know if you've ever got to the end of a Teams call or a Teams meeting and it asks you, rate the call. Was this good? Was this bad? What it was. It's really important to educate your users to give accurate feedback, because there are reporting metrics behind the scenes that actually overlay that kind of information with other key network statistics and things like that to really make sure you can be proactive about a problem that may be occurring. So I think we're going to pivot now, and we're going to have a look at some of those options, some of those choices that we've got available. And the first one is, we mentioned you have two options to break out to the telephony network. We've either got calling plans or we have direct routing. So if we kind of go back and we remember what Tom spoke about originally, you've got to have your Office 365 license. You've got to have your Microsoft phone system license. You can obviously use the Teams client or any of the devices that we've spoke about to make the calls. You then need to break out to the telephony network and place your calls in some way. The Microsoft way, kind of completely going down the vanilla path to Microsoft, is to have a calling plan with Microsoft, of which there are numbers available. So you could have just national calls, so things like, is it 01, 02, 03 numbers included within a bundle that you buy from Microsoft, port your numbers over to Microsoft, and effectively you're paying Microsoft or paying Computer World on behalf of Microsoft to be able to get that, and you get an inclusive amount into there. If you then needed to make an international call or a premium rate call, as an organization, you want to have a bundle of calling credits available that will be consumed as they are needed. But there are also wider bundles available where you could have the international calls in there available, and you can make that decision on a kind of a per user basis as to what would be there. So that's your first option, very vanilla. The limitation of that is maybe the call cost is slightly higher with Microsoft. It's simpler to manage, but you are also limited on the features that Microsoft include within their calling plan. So if you needed to break out to external things within your existing telephony network, maybe you've got analog devices you need to use, maybe you've got different phone systems, you've got a contact center solution. If there are any advanced requirements, you will want to look at direct routing. And if you're an organization maybe of over 100 users, it may be cheaper also for you to have a look at direct routing, which brings us to that second option, to direct routing. So if I bring the design up here, on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the phone system hosted alongside your Microsoft 365 user is connecting in via Teams to make the call. Then over the internet, we're connecting to a certified session border controller. Now, if you're working with Computer World, we're able to either work with an existing session border controller that you may already have in place, or we also offer an option for a fully hosted, fully managed SBC in the cloud that we can offer for you. So you don't need any calling credits, you don't need any calling plans. You connect through to the hosted SBC or an SBC in your environment. Your numbers will sit with our telephony provider, in this example, not Microsoft, as it would have done with the calling credits option. And we have the option to then break out to things like contact center solutions. So if you're managing a number of calls coming into a contact center, maybe you're supporting a product or you're supporting a service, you can easily integrate those. And that will then break out to that PSTN provider, so the plain old telephone network, where you will be paying for, again, your bundles of minutes and things like that. In terms of the integrations, if you already have an SBC in place and you want to continue using that, maybe you've been using Skype or you've got a more advanced phone system, on the left there you can see the current supported SBCs. At Computer World, our hosted solution is based upon Ribbon. And then if you're looking at contact center solutions, you want to make sure it's fully supported with inside Microsoft Teams, you can look at those solutions such as Anywhere 365 and Enghouse Interactive, which are both solutions that Computer World works very closely upon. And certainly in the housing sector and some other sectors, these are really important solutions that are part of your overall design. So again, just to compare them between a native Microsoft solution and a direct routing solution, you can see the features and functionalities and what you will need from that. But the best bet is to arrange to have a chat with myself or Tom, go through what your requirements are. If you're a relatively small company, relatively simple use case, it might be that we can put a very affordable solution together for you that's easy to manage based upon the vanilla Microsoft solutions. If you have any complexities or you're getting above 100 users, let's say, we can again put a fully managed solution in place for direct routing that really shouldn't cause you any extra grief, because we're going to wrap that all up in a managed service to give you complete peace of mind. And if there are features such as call recording that is coming out from Microsoft but not there today, we can include that at the SPC level to make sure we're ticking those boxes of the features that you would need. So as we kind of get to the end of the presentation today, I just wanted to kind of wrap up with a few final thoughts. Tom, from your perspective and in the conversations you've had, are there any things that you advise customers to be thinking about prior to joining you on a call regarding telephony and Teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the best things to think about before having a conversation with ourselves is, what are your actual requirements? How many people in your organization need to have a number that they need to call from? And then of those people, how many of them want a desk phone? How many of them actually will be better suited to a headset? Where perhaps how many reception phones do you need? That sort of thing. Yeah, and then really it's just looking at what licenses you require for those users, and then do you need to do international calling plans? Do you need some of the sort of more advanced features that you were saying about that we can integrate in at the SBC level, perhaps for a contact center? Because this very much isn't just a solution for sort of small businesses. It's definitely something that can be scaled up to larger, more complex environments like a call center as well.
Definitely. Some really good points there, Tom. So I think if you're at the point now where your phone system is due for renewal, or you are significantly struggling with this kind of flexible working, making sure that people can pick up a call no matter where they are, whether they're working from home, whether they're in the office, the same number, you're not having to try and get them on their mobile because they're not answering their desk phone. If you're looking to centralize all of that communication inside Microsoft Teams, now is the time to be looking at this. It's no longer kind of early adopters. This is now at a point of mass adoption. We've got lots of customers that are going on to this. So as a call to action, as something to take away from that, reach out to your account manager, ask to speak to one of the specialists at Computer World to talk about your needs. We can arrange things like proof of concepts and demonstrations for the technology to meet you. Thank you ever so much for joining us on this session today. Tom, thank you for joining us. And if we can be of any further assistance to you, please reach out. Thank you very much.